Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hayawam tawab la atham za'ach yakam yawam on Chakadal, Charlotte, which is good day. This is your brother Yawam from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam kaya. Hamalakat hashamayim kwarab, repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call layim la la, but now we hawa bahasham yahushai. Bahasham ruchak wadash. Wamashinala zakwanim nawa. Wamala akim shal which is our praises too. Our Father Yahweh, which means He exists. Bahasham in the name Yahweh Shai. He delivers in double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. So pretty much, I just was going on a brief walk, and it just sparked in my spirit, just to go into essentially building up our houses. You see, because in Matthew, the 7th chapter, it talks about the two foundations. And the two foundations, you got the ones in verse 24, the wise men that essentially built their foundation on that rock, who is Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. The true foundation, which, allows for stability, you see. But then you also had, those that essentially built their houses upon that sand, which represents 2/3, So I just want to go into that. And it's going to be like an impromptu. Essentially, I quoted Matthew, the 7th chapter. Again, the wise men are going to be the ones that essentially, chose that correct foundation, because when we go into the scriptures, all right, when we get scriptures like 2nd Esdras chapter 14 and verse 13, it says, set our houses in order, in which, and setting our houses in order, that starts with ourselves. How we build ourselves up is by essentially choosing that correct foundation, who is Yahweh Shai, because He's the chief cornerstone. The thing about a cornerstone is that essentially to build, for something to be built up and for it to be stable, it has to have a cornerstone, in which Yahweh Shai is that cornerstone, so we have to build ourselves up in the Lord, So again, quoting that precept, it was 2nd Esdras 14 and verse 13. It says, set thy house in order and reprove thy people. So before we can, essentially bring out this word and reprove the nation of Yasharahla, essentially it starts with ourselves. All right, how we build ourselves up again by essentially subscribing to this word. All right. Also scriptures like Psalms 119 and verse 9, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way, by taking heed thereto, according to thy word, so which that precept ultimately starts with the word Beth, which Beth in Hebrew, in the ancient Hebrew is Bayat. All right. Bayat, that means house, so the word for house, Bayat, has a wide use of application, and specifically it's going into, in this sense, in Psalms 119 and verse 9, is going into, the building up the house of the Spirit, building up ourselves, all right, in the Lord. All right, again, it says, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way, you see, because ultimately, coming up in this world, we've essentially, came up, in the ways of America, Babylon the Great, so essentially we're dirty, how we cleanse up ourselves, all right, and walk in that good way is by subscribing to this truth, all right. Again, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way, by taking heed thereto, according to thy word, so ultimately we have to go back to the blueprint, all right, in order to, cleanse ourselves up, you see, because the scriptures say that in Proverbs, the 24th chapter, it says through wisdom is a house builded, and by understanding it is established. All right, and then the next verse goes on to say, essentially, the inner parts, the rooms and stuff like that will be filled with all precious and pleasant riches, So when we liken that unto, our bodies, all right, when you got an actual house, that actual house takes on a certain blueprint, you see. So you got, the bathroom, all right, you got the kitchen, you got the living room, the front room, all right, the dining room, you got your, a game room. So when you apply that and liken that unto the spirit, all right, the similitude in the spirit is that, all right, those same rooms inside the body, all right, the body is going to take on fear, all right, it's going to take on wisdom, it's going to take on knowledge, all right, it's going to take on understanding. Those is what's going to be comprised in that new house, all right. The new house has to essentially be built up in the Lord, all right, because going back to Matthew, the 7th chapter, those that essentially built their houses upon that sand, they didn't choose the correct foundation. All right. And then going into, the latter verses, essentially it talks about the different adversities, All right, so while, you know, this world is essentially continuing to crumble, all right, the elect, all right, the men of the Lord are going to be good. Scriptures say that, you know, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. My servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, you know, my servant shall rejoice for, you know, shall be in a spirit of rejoicing, all right, but ye shall be howling for vexation of spirit, you know, because ultimately 2/3 are essentially putting their trust and they're putting their confidence, all right, in carnal riches, all right, worldly riches, which those things are, as we see, you know, they're continuing to, you know, fade away. All right, the different benefits, the different benefits that America, Babylon the Great essentially offered, those things are being stripped away. You see, the Lord is essentially making it to where, you know, Jake has no choice, you know, but to serve him. You see, which 2/3 it's been written that, you know, they're not going to ultimately follow. They're not going to play with that tune. You know, they're not ultimately going to abide, all right, and essentially fix up their houses in the correct fashion, you know. So when the said calamities come, you see what I'm saying? They're going to be taken in those said calamities, you know. While, you know, essentially the elect is going to have built up their house in the correct foundation, all right, and, you know, they're going to be good. You know, the elect is going to be good. The Lord is going to make sure that we're covered. You know, I don't want to write this out. We endure unto the end. You see, but the elect is going to essentially abide in the Lord. All right, the Lord is going to be our confidence. The Lord is going to be our, you know, what's giving us our daily bread. All right, as He gives us our daily bread currently. All right, scriptures like, you know, Proverbs 14:26, it says, the fear of the Lord is a strong confidence. All right, because in these times, in these adverse times, you know, the fear of the Lord is going to keep us. All right, by it's going to keep us from making any type of rash decisions, you see, because again, those comforts, all right, those benefits is being taken away from 2/3, you see, so they don't have anything to abide in. They don't have any type of confidence. They don't have any type of stability. All right, our stability is going to be essentially abiding in the Lord, you see, because that's going to keep us from doing something rash and irrational to where it's going to get us destroyed, you know, because again, they could be making decisions out of irrationality. All right, they're going to be making decisions based off of, they're not going to be coming from a mindset of abundance. Whereas, you know, us abiding in this truth, we have a mindset of abundance, you see, because we have more than what we need. Pursuant to Ayawab Job 23 and verse 12, you know, the scriptures is all we need, you know, which in the scriptures, it tells us essentially to, you know, to cast off, you know, the ways of this world. All right, and in the ways of this world essentially goes into, you know, confiding in this world and what this world has to offer. All right, but yeah, I just want to go into that, you see, because again, we in a time to where, you know, the different benefits, the goodies of this world is being taken away, and essentially those that put their trust in the Lord is going to essentially be covered and be stable, as pursuant to Isaiah 33:6. Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. So it starts with the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is going to be the stability. And that's essentially, all right, what's going to keep us stable, because we're abiding in Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, who is that rock mentioned in Matthew, the 7th chapter, you know. So just wanted to go into that. I don't want to zaz about the Apollos, where there's a beautiful edification through the Spirit. Well, I don't want to zaz Yash Rob Tawab, Lord's will. You have a good evening. Wa shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Shalom, shalom.